We think about and prepare for the Christmas season, it brings a lot of expectation with it. And I think each of us is like looking forward to a different part of this holiday season. And obviously this holiday season is like super strange and different from other holidays. But I just think back to the impact and the effect that like Christmas has on each of us. And I remember back to when I was a kid and how most kids are like super excited at Christmas for the gifts that they're going to receive, right? For us, we might be excited about traditions or people we're going to see or things that we're going to do. But as a kid, it was all about that one toy you wanted. I've even got a roommate now who's an adult, and it's all about that one Lego set that he wants. It's an $800 Lego set, and he's like, just give me money so I can save towards it because I know that you can't afford to buy it for me. So we've each got our different thing that we're looking forward to. And I think it's interesting to think about what happens on Christmas Day as kids start to receive those toys, though. Because you rip off the wrapping paper and you're all excited about this new toy. Oh, yes, it's that Lego set I've been wanting. And you pull it out of the box and you put it together by that afternoon. And you play with it for a few days. And then pretty soon that toy is just mixed in with the other toys. It's off to the side. It's kind of discarded. And I wonder if sometimes as Christians, we begin to feel a little discarded. We feel lonely or left out or isolated. And I don't think that that's the life that God intends for us. But as we look at 1 Peter chapter 2 today, I want to take a look at what it is that God's doing now that we have come to Him. Because He doesn't treat us like one of those birthday gifts. So what is it that God is doing now that we have come to Him? So if you'll flip with me to 1 Peter chapter 2, we're going to be in verse 4. And I think that the first thing that we can look at in here is seeing that now that we have come to Him, God is making us into a holy community. So 1 Peter chapter 2, starting in verse 4, it says this: As you come to Him, the living stone, rejected by men, but chosen by God and precious to Him, you also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. For in Scripture it says, See, I lay a stone in Zion, a chosen and precious cornerstone, and the one who trusts in Him will never be put to shame. Now to you who believe, this stone is precious, but to those who do not believe, the stone the builders rejected has become the capstone, and a stone that causes men to stumble, and a rock that makes them fall. They stumble because they disobey the message, which is also what they were destined for. We're going to pause here and really look in at what it is to be a holy community, to be made into a holy community now that we've come to God. He uses this analogy of a cornerstone and calls Jesus the living stone. He's the cornerstone of what's going on. And I don't know how familiar you are with architecture, but when I went to the Library of Congress, I had somebody explain to me a little bit more about what a cornerstone is. They have the cornerstone on display there, and the cornerstone is the first stone that's laid in a building. And that cornerstone is what the entire building is built upon. It gives the foundation. It gives a sense of what the structure is going to look like. It gives the basis for the look of the structure, for how it's going to rise out of the ground and become a building or become a house, become, in this case, a library. And God's saying Jesus is that stone. He's the foundation of the house of God. He is the cornerstone that we are being built upon. But more than that, we are living stones now that we're in Christ. So you take and you put the cornerstone in the center of the corner of the building, first stone that's laid, and then you build all the other rocks on top of it, and they all begin to conform based on that cornerstone and how it's shaped and how it's set. And when I'm thinking about this passage, I can't help but think about Legos, because Legos are just the classic building tool, right? They interlock with each other. You can put them together. You can take them apart. You can build something new. And when I was growing up, we had this giant bin of Legos in my house. It was like 3 feet wide by 3 feet long by 2 feet wide and a foot deep, and it just was like filled with Legos. And one year somebody gave us this yellow Lego table. It was about 2 feet by 2 feet, and I remember it because we spent all kinds of time playing on this thing. It had a little trough you could store the Legos in, and then it had a giant platform that you could build whatever on top of. And I remember building so many structures on that, and you could build all the way around it, because it was a base that all the Legos would stick to. And you could use that to shape and to form the structure that you are building. And as God takes us and he puts us in place, he uses us to build his building, his structure. And Christ is like that table that he's building on that gives the foundation for everything that he's doing. And if you've ever built with Legos, you know that there's a certain way that you can build and make a really strong house. But there's another way that you can build where somebody can come along and do this and your entire thing collapses. And so as God takes and uses us as living stones, I think of us as little Lego bricks that he's putting in place, and he's interlocking and overlapping so that the structure is made strong, it's given shape, and it begins to rise out of the ground as a testament to who God is. It's something that's set apart, it's holy, and he's taken and he's placed each of us into community in that structure. When we're placed into community, we're right next to other bricks. We're around other living stones. We're used in the way that God desires. He places us intentionally. And when he does that, it requires something of us. If you look here in verse 5, it says that we're offering spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God. As God builds us, it requires sacrifice on our part because he's shaping us. He's making us into the right size stones, the right shape stones to fit in line with what he's doing. And so sometimes we have to give of ourselves in different ways. Maybe that's a giving of your time to serve in a ministry in the church, or a giving of your resources, your money to support God's work. Maybe that's just a giving of space in your heart so that you can allow God to be present there and to be working and showing you sin and things that are going on that he needs to pull out of you so that you can show yourself to be more set apart. Maybe that's a sacrificing of things that you want to do, or maybe it's a sacrificing by doing things you don't want to do. Whatever that is, those sacrifices are us going, all right, God, use me. Put me in the place that you desire for me in your house so that I can live for you. Now that we have come to God, he is making us into a holy community. That sounds really hard and that sounds really difficult sometimes. But I'd rather be the one being built up into that community than the one stepping on the Lego, stubbing my toe on the stumbling block. Maybe it's just as simple as going, God, today I'm feeling really down. Can you show me what's going on in my heart so that I can look to you in the midst of my circumstances? Now that we've come to God, he is building us into a holy community. But not only is God acting upon us, God is calling us to action in this passage. Let's take a look at verses 9 and 10 in 1 Peter 2. He says this, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people belonging to God, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy." I get so fired up when I read this because God's chosen us. He's picked us. He's made us royal priests. He's made us a holy nation. We belong to him. We're not a discarded people. We're not left on the toy shelf. We belong. I guess I think of in high school when people would get their Letterman jackets, right? And you'd wear your Letterman jacket with pride and they'd swagger around in it because everybody knew who they were. It had the sport that they had played on it. Their identity was on display. And then, if you hung out with them for any time, you were confident that you would hear stories about their exploits in that sport. And God does the same thing. He builds us into something where it's on display. Like we're set apart. We're holy. The whole world's going to see it. That's a matter of fact. That's how it works when we're in a holy community. But he also calls us to declare his praises. It's more than just sitting here and going, hey, I hope you see that I'm a holy community. But it's now going out and going, hey, let me tell you about this God that I serve. I guess I think of a puppy at the pound who somebody comes in and they adopt them and they rescue them. And that puppy follows them everywhere. Because it was lost and it was alone and it was abandoned. But now, it wants everybody to know that's my master. That's my God who saved me. And when we are confident and walk in that identity, we begin to proclaim it to the world. We declare God's praises. Now that we have come to him, he is using us to declare his praises. Perhaps for you, that's just like using this holiday season as a time to be really intentional with the way that you decorate your house or with the Christmas cards that you send out. Maybe that's going out and having conversations with your neighbors, baking a bunch of cookies so that you can take them with a note to each of your neighbors. Maybe it's as simple as writing a note or a letter to family or friends to let them know how you're doing, to check in and see how they're doing in this time where it's so easy to feel isolated and lost and separated from our community. Maybe it's going out and doing evangelism or serving at the local food bank. Being in contact with people. I know right now we want to keep a safe distance, but at the same time, there are times where we need to physically be present so that we can share with others in their burdens, so that we can tell them about who Jesus is in a radical way. Some people are going to go, oh, whoa, you're talking about declaring, that's not for me. I'm an introvert. I don't do that stuff. But as an introvert, as an extrovert, as somebody who doesn't know anybody, as somebody who's constantly in contact with people, there's always a way that we can declare God's praises, whether that's through a craft that you're really good at, a trade. Maybe it's by declaring his praises through a deep one-on-one conversation, or maybe it's through, taking a preaching class at a seminary so that you can become a more effective communicator. Whatever it is, now that we've come to him, God is using us to declare his praises. As we look at what Peter has said here, he's given us this idea of Christ as the living cornerstone, building and molding, shaping a holy community. And that God is using us to build that holy community like little Lego blocks, living Legos that he's building a house out of. And because he is acting upon us, we are then compelled to act out of the identity that we have in him by declaring his praises to the world around us. We act because he first acted upon us. What's that going to look like for you this week? What's going to be your first step in being acted upon and acting as a result? Do you need to set aside that space to just be with God and build that relationship? Do you need to sacrifice something that you've been holding on to and not letting God have so that he can place you into his holy community? Do you need to speak out and declare his praises in some way? Are you brave enough to speak out this Christmas season? To decorate, to dedicate, to conversate, whatever it might be. Now that we have come to him, God is building us into a holy community, and he is using us to declare his praises. He is acting upon us, so we are acting towards those around us. What does that mean for you? And what does that mean for me? Thank you.